everyone. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our 2026 April Spring QualLab lunch. We're super excited to have you here. I'm Tara Crawford. I'm a second year PhD student in the Higher Education and Student Affairs program here at The Ohio State University and a graduate student intern for the QualLab Research Center. And we're so excited to have you join us. Over the course of the next hour, we will have a presentation from our presenter, Dr. View Johnson, who officially goes by Dr. View, who will be giving a talk entitled Curriculum of the Mind, a BlackCrit narrative inquiry hip hop album. I'll share some brief housekeeping tips, and then we'll have opening remarks from our director, Dr. Penny Pasquay, and then I'll introduce our speaker. Following our speaker's talk, we'll have an opportunity for question and answers, and then I'll come back and do a quick wrap up. So thank you so much, and we're super excited to have you here. Just so that you're aware, over the course of the next hour, we'll be able to do our presentation with our speaker, Dr. View. Please make sure that you are able to engage with us in our question and answers. You can type in any questions you like in the chat. This session is being recorded. The recording will be available on the QualLab website, and our closed captioning is provided during the session. You can access it by clicking live transcript, the CC icon on the bottom of the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Feel free to turn it off and on as you like. And from there, I'm going to pass it to Dr. Pasquay for opening remarks.
Thank you, Tara. I appreciate you, and thank you for hosting all the QualLab lunches this past year as our research intern at the QualLab. The QualLab Research Center is a wonderful space, and it is really about advancing, pushing on cutting-edge methodological approaches, such as the one that you will hear about today. We have a dashboard of resources, as Tara mentioned. We do contracts and grants. You know, it's all soft money now, so it's a bit different than when we started, but our commitment to cutting-edge research and innovative methodologies remains. So we try to keep everything up on the website and free and accessible so you can use it in your courses or as you learn. Well, tell me the difference between narrative and grounded theory again. It's all there for you. So in Ohio, we have a policy now that we cannot do land acknowledgements. We cannot provide a statement of land acknowledgement. And instead of sharing our land acknowledgement, I think it's important to highlight this policy in the state of Ohio. Here's the first part. The second part is here. Because we can't do that, I want to let you know that we still want to honor the land that we're on and invite you to Ohio. If you're here, there is a UNESCO World Heritage Site right here, like the Grand Canyon and all the other things across the globe. Here in Ohio, we have Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks. They were actually developed just decades and decades and centuries ago by the indigenous communities here. It's pretty incredible. Get the tour if you can to really understand why it rose to the level of UNESCO World Heritage Site and all that it offers. So please, you're welcome to come. We would love you to join us on in this space in Ohio. With that, I know Tara will do this wonderful introduction and formal introduction, but I wanted to share that I met Dr. Stevie Johnson in the PhD program at the University of Oklahoma, where I was a faculty and he was a student. His brilliance started before I knew him, and his commitment to this work has never wavered. He is one of the most committed, dedicated, talented scholar to bring scholarship, hip hop practice together in a way that will be shared for you today. He's also a warm and wonderful, thoughtful, caring person. I hope you get to enjoy this today, as well as see him at AERA, our conference that's coming up next week, as well as engage with him on social media and all the things that we'll share in a bit. So with that, I'll pass the formal introduction to Tara, and thank you, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Johnson, for being here today.
Thank you, Dr. Pasquay. As Dr. Pasquay mentioned, Stevie Dr. View Johnson is an award-winning DJ, producer, scholar, and cultural architect whose work sits at the intersection of Black sound, creative practice, community organizing, and critical scholarship. He currently serves as the Assistant Professor of Creative Practice and Popular Music at The Ohio State University, where he advances a model of hip hop creative practice that integrates DJing, sampling, mashups, and cultural memory and community-based research. Dr. View, as Dr. Pasquay mentioned, Dr. View earned his PhD in higher education administration from the University of Oklahoma. His groundbreaking dissertation, which we'll learn more about today, Curriculum of the Mind, became the first non-traditional dissertation to win the 2019 Bobby Wright Dissertation of the Year Award from the Association for the Study of Higher Education. The project blends narrative, music, performance, and community-centered inquiry to illuminate the lived educational experiences of Black students. Curriculum of the Mind is now being published as an interactive ebook. How exciting! By the University of Michigan Press, slated for release this month. The forthcoming publication expands the work into a multi-modal, sonic, and visually immersive scholarly experience that redefines what academic research can be. As a creative practitioner, Dr. View is the founder of SALS, a platform and performance research company designed to reposition the DJ as a scholar, activist, historian, and cultural facilitator. Through SALS, he curates immersive mashups experience that merge archival music, contemporary soundscapes, and allowing audiences to experience Black history, identity, and cultural lineage through layered storytelling. In 2023, Dr. View was named the Nasir Hip Hop Jones Fellow of Harvard University, where he expanded his research on DJ practice, sonic memory, and the role of hip hop as a vehicle for community healing and historical preservation. His work at Harvard deepened his interdisciplinary approach to linking music, community engagement, and cultural scholarship. Across his work, on stage, in the studio, and in the classroom, and in the community, Dr. View is committed to elevating Black creative knowledge, honoring cultural lineage, and transforming the possibilities of creative scholarship. Without further ado, let's give a very warm, wound, and virtual welcome to Dr. View. And with that, I'll pass it to Dr. Views.
Yeah, appreciate you, Tara, or the future Dr. Crawford. Appreciate the invitation. Much love to Dr. Passwood as well. Um, really fun fact, like Dr. Pasquale really saved my academic career in a lot of ways, particularly as I was trying to kind of get this groundwork off the ground with curriculum of the mind. So I'm just so grateful, and always, if whenever I can, will say yes to Dr. Pasquale. So really grateful for the invitation. I'm really excited to share this work, particularly because I think now I'm able to kind of show the inception of the work and kind of where it clearly is going to be now as I get ready for the ebook to be released at the end of this month. So really excited. And I'm as much as Tara has mentioned, I'm really a nerd at heart. I really enjoy my qualitative methods courses, which Dr. Pasquale taught, because it really helped me to understand that a lot of things that I was doing as a DJ, as a producer, as an organizer, I just needed to understand the language in the academic space, and just kind of make it my own. So truly grateful to be here. Going to talk about curriculum of the mind, and so let's just get into it. Um, so I think before we get started with the work, I think it's important that you all understand kind of how everything kind of came into play in relation to the work. And so this is me at the age of probably like 2, 3 years old. It's my mother giving me this cassette boombox tape, and this is kind of the I can remember the things that I recorded like as a child in relation to this cassette tape that my mom gave me. And, I think a lot of times when it comes to particularly qualitative work, there's this idea of like how much subjectivity is placed in the work and how can we be sometimes as objective as possible or make sure we're doing credible or ethical work. And I think in the stage in the world that we live in, um, it's kind of hard to not be subjective, particularly when it comes to Black and Brown lived experiences. And so I try to highlight like my story embedded in the work. Obviously, I make like notes of my subjectivity in my work as well, but all of it is kind of a thread line for me, and I think it's important to share. So um, I've only had one black teacher in my K-12 experience, and her name was Miss Janice Ford. She was my first grade teacher, and she would sing to me every morning. If you want to be somebody, if you want to go somewhere, you better wake up and pay attention. And that was like this affirmation that she gave us continuously as children, and something that I remember even now. And it was roughly 25 years before I saw Miss Ford again, this is a picture of her. I was doing some archival work around my mother and invited her, just found her on Facebook and asked her to come be a part of that experience. And that was the first time I saw her in 25 years. And this was just kind of a moment that was documented during the day of just us seeing each other and just kind of reliving those moments. She recently just passed away, roughly 6 months ago. And just someone who has really instilled a lot of these um, core elements of my work. Particularly my mother. I would argue she's a hip hop feminist, even though she didn't really understand what that meant. But having this teacher, Miss Janice Ford, affirming me in that way, and realizing that she got it from this movie, Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit, really is a aha moment for me, particularly being in the School of Music at the Ohio State University, which, Tara mentioned my PhD is in higher ed administration. So, a lot of people say, like, how did you take higher administration and get into a School of Music? And I think having these particular figures in my life who are able to instill so much love and joy, but also help me to understand that my work is interdisciplinary and can be used in so many different mediums and so in so many different genres of scholarship. And so, yeah, like to be in a school of music now where if you've seen the movie Sister Act 2, the last scene, you have the gospel, you have the jazz, you have the hip hop, you have the dance, you have the production, the orchestral performances. All these things are encapsulated in the work that I do at Ohio State, but also in the work that I was doing even before I came to Columbus. So just wanted to highlight that. The first two albums that I ever received from my mother was The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, as well as Tupac's Greatest Hits. And I highlight that because these are literally my foundational texts, and people will have discussions with me about what is text. And for me, albums is my medium, my lens of how I do this work. But to have a mother who didn't really understand what hip hop was doing, but knew that it was something that sparked my interest, and particularly being a mother who was raising a black son by herself, who was working graveyard shifts. My grandmother was taking me to school every day. She wanted to make sure that she could protect me as much as possible. And she recognized that these albums were things that not only she resonated with, but individual artists that I resonated with as well. So these are kind of like my grandmother and grandfathers of my academic kind of lineage as well. So fast forward, I attended the University of Oklahoma. I started as an undergraduate student in 2007, um, going from, Longview, Texas, country town to 30,000, 40,000 students, being the only black face, in my class. It was very difficult for me to adjust to a new environment. And one day I had a roommate at the time who had this software, which you see on the screen called Virtual DJ. And essentially as a DJ, you have turntables, you have mixers, you have, headphones. I didn't have any of that equipment. All I had was the software. And so I essentially self-taught myself how to utilize this software to really create a sense of belonging for myself. So I don't know if you all are familiar with Dr. Terrell Strayhorn's work around sense of belonging, but essentially before I understood what sense of belonging was, I gravitated to this idea of music and virtual DJ to really create a safe space for me when I'm around um, so many people who don't look like me. And so self-taught, no headphones. Essentially, I had to memorize my music. So developing cue points, essentially parts of the song where I wanted the song to start playing. For me to develop 3, 4 hour sets for community organization, student organization on campus, I was essentially memorizing my music to create these ebbs and flows for an experience for my peers. And I wasn't really understanding, at the time what I was doing, but I was essentially creating community, and really understanding my identity, like not only as a Black male student at a historically white institution, but my servitude, my service leadership in relation to how I wanted to create a sense of safety space for other Black and brown students on campus too. Um, so fast forward, I developed enough buzz to where I was able to purchase my own equipment, and I was just DJing a lot around campus, around other college institutions, regionally, being part of fraternity and being a part of that space. So I essentially built my community through this love of music and really teaching myself essentially how to, manipulate this software, which is inherently racist as is. So for me to understand the shortcuts of it, but to manipulate it in a way that made sense to me, but also translating my message to my audience. Um, so I finished my bachelor's in 2011, and I essentially wanted to DJ full time, but I was afraid to tell my mother I wanted to do that, being an out-of-state student and, essentially not utilizing my bachelor's degree to pursue something. I just felt kind of selfish in that moment. And I felt like I needed more time to understand what my next step was. So, fun fact, I actually just picked a master's program. And I was like, well, I think education seemed like the easiest master's program to at least help me to understand what my next step would be. But I don't think I realized that because of how I was raised in a K-12 experience, particularly my first grade teacher, that I was actually walking in my purpose and didn't even know it. It was just, I was so passionate about music. I just didn't know what to do with it. But the purpose came when I started this master's education, particularly in student affairs, which is where I first met Dr. Passway. And ultimately, I finished that in 2013. I took 2 years off and worked for 2 years at the University of Central Oklahoma as their coordinator of diversity inclusion. I ended up being promoted to assistant director of diversity retention, where I was essentially tasked by the vice president of student affairs to develop a Black male initiative program, which this is a photo of a Black male summit where we highlight high school students from around the Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Lawton, which is our three major cities, to come to campus and develop workshops, get them to understand like the ins and outs of being at a college campus. So people do workshops, et cetera. But I had a Black Male Initiative program where I was the curricular and co-curricular kind of director of the program. And a lot of conversations I was having with my students was about authenticity. And for me, being in a higher ed space, I felt like I had to kind of compress my identity as a DJ because a lot of these students knew me as, at the time, DJ View, but not as an academic. And in my mind, I wanted people to take me serious about my role. And I felt like I couldn't share this identity as a DJ. But it's really the mentees were teaching the mentor me that I could be my full authentic self. And that encouraged me to do the dissertation work that we're going to talk about today. And so a lot of the work was centered around Black males have the lowest retention and graduation rates amongst any institution type in America. And I wanted to create a dissertation that interrogated that because I'm having conversations not only with my students, but I'm also rethinking about my own lived experiences and how I was able to matriculate through college as well. And so reluctantly decided to do a PhD program, which I started in the fall of 2015. And this is essentially where curriculum of mine was developed. And part of my work, not only at the institution that I was working at, but also my alma mater, OU, at the time, there was a lot of national news around a particular organization that was chanting these things on a bus saying there'll never be another nigger in SAE. And so there was a lot of natural tension. There was a lot of blackface that was going on campus at the time. And I was really trying to create a dissertation to make a counter narrative that it wasn't that these black males were academically unprepared, but it was because of the racial environment that they encountered that they didn't necessarily want to be at these institutions anymore. And so, as opposed to developing a traditional dissertation, which I did write, I wanted to create something to where access was the thing that was on the forefront of my mind. I don't want to create a dissertation where I write something and it sits on a shelf and only, a handful of people read it because they have access to, databases and journal articles and et cetera. I wanted to create something where it's accessible to the people who need to hear it and see it the most, i.e., prospective Black and Brown students who may have interest attending a historically white institution, or parents who don't understand the ins and outs of what it means for their child to attend a historically white institution. So how do I create an album that is centered around these qualitative ideals of theoretical, conceptual, methodological frameworks and analysis, but do it through an album. And so that's essentially where Curriculum of Mind comes from. So I'm going to talk kind of through the research design, and then we'll move on from there. So yeah, my biggest thing, even before I decided to go into a PhD program, was that I wanted to do hip hop albums or EPs, which are essentially shorter projects, roughly like 5 to 10 tracks, as scholarly and accessible texts. So I'm making the argument that hip hop albums are or should be looked at as equivalent to a book. And I'm also making an argument later in relation to the ebook that you get more out of a creative work, i.e. an album, than you would from a traditional book. Because sometimes when you're reading, you can't really, you can make an assumption about the tone of what you're reading, but it makes more sense, or it's more valid when you can hear it, when you feel like you can touch it, and you feel like you understand the ins and outs of why people said certain things. And all of these elements are in the ebook that we're going to share in a second. But this is just kind of my framing in relation to my work. So I'm I love I have some really great mentors, and I've heard them speak in a plethora of spaces, and these quotes in particular, one from Dr. Gloria Lasson Billings, who does dynamic work on culturally relevant pedagogy. Is also a hip hop scholar as well. She said something in 2016 at AERA, our hip hop special interest group, which I'm the co-chair of. She says, define, redefine, imagine, reimagine, and mobilize the power of hip hop culture, scholarship, and praxis. And to me, that's like it's like reading something in scripture and being affirmed of like the discernment that you have in the work that you're doing. I felt seen, I felt heard, and I felt like I had an opportunity to really reimagine what this work can look like. And I think the fruits of my labor are coming in real time because of these particular moments that I took in. And then Dr. Ruth Nicole Brown, if you're not familiar with her work around Soul Hot, she said, follow your passion, resist professionalization, act and read and act all fearlessly. And for those who know me, like I'm a very quiet, introverted person, but I'm very serious about um, the intentionality of not only my work, but how the work is connected to the people that I love. Um, and resisting professionalization, like not watering down the work because of the institution, the ivory tower that we live in or that we work in. And so these are just phrases, things that I live by, that really um, provides a foundation for the work that I do. And then I would also add Dr. Regina Bradley, who's at Kennesaw State University, another dope hip hop scholar. She says, particularly being in Oklahoma, which people argue Oklahoma is the South. Yes, it is. But she says Southern hip hop de-romanticizes the mountaintop as prime real estate and works it for what it is, an entanglement of race, place, and privileged memories that attempts to thwart the ideas and reflections outside of a suitable Southern spectrum that remains closely tied to the socio-historical boundaries of a Southern imagination. The hip hop South carves out room to work through the challenges of existing in the most recent cycles of the post-civil rights South. And I think by far, this is something that I live by, and I definitely de-romanticize, particularly with this project, what it means as a Black male individual to be at a historically white institution. And so yeah, I just wanted to make sure I provided those foundational pieces as we work through the design. So in relation to the criteria, it was Black males, and I think what's unique about it is because I looked at currently enrolled students at of all Oklahoma institutions, historically white institutions, um, who completed at least 12 credit hours, including undergraduates, graduate students, transfer students. I also looked at um, individuals who attended a historically white institution the last 10 years and have either stopped or graduated with an associate or bachelor's degree. So again, I was looking at currently enrolled individuals who had graduated and particularly individuals who had stopped out at these institutions because I wanted to make sure there was a not a monolithic perspective in relation to experiences of, for some who succeeded, what worked, what experience did you have that were anti-Black, where for those who didn't finish, why, what were those reasons? And I think also what's important is individuals who are also identified as an artist, a creative, a rapper, musician, composer, producer, et cetera. Um, it wasn't just I needed folks who could rap or people who could produce. I was looking for folks who saw themselves as creatives in their particular areas because when I was thinking about the the research, and I'm connecting research synonymous with content. For example, when I see stuff on social media, when people are developing reels, to me, that's like anthropology, that is hermeneutic phenomenology, that is research to me. And so I wanted to create something where, from a graphic design perspective, how do we um, brand and market the work, and how we articulate the work at the same time. Music videos, videographers, photographers, like all of those elements are important to telling the story, particularly through an album. So I felt like I had to do more work to justify why I felt this work was credible, particularly being in the space of academia. And so Dr. Emery Petchower essentially helped me to kind of understand the criteria of these identities as a hip hop collegian, like college students who make their active participation in hip hop relevant to their educational interests. A student who listens to rap music is not a hip hop collegian, but a hip hop collegian is a student who feels rap music, is invested in its genealogy, studies its micro eras, deconstructs its themes with friends, and holds it as an authoritative source of knowledge parallel to course material. And I think for there, it allowed me to make it a little bit more expansive, and have more reach. So, um, so in relation to the theoretical and conceptual frameworks, um, I felt like with hip hop and academia, it's similar because when it comes to hip hop, particularly this idea of sampling, there's not necessarily one particular piece of a song that makes this new like thing take place. And I took that same type of ideology in relation to the theoretical conceptual frameworks of this dissertation. So me taking a sample from CRT, but understanding that CRT is limiting, so bringing in this idea of Black critical theory, but also understanding that, from a theoretical and conceptual framework, like the theoretical framework explains why a problem exists, but the conceptual framework illustrates how specific ideas in the study connect. So I felt like if I was going to be discussing these anti-Black experiences that these Black males were encountering, I also wanted to understand from their perspective what freedom meant, whether they believe it exists or not, in relation to this idea of marronage, which we'll talk about in a second. So I'm going to break down these theoretical conceptual frameworks, kind of discuss limitations and why I usually utilize them all to utilize them as my framework for the dissertation. So long story short, I'm not going to read it all. I'm basically going to say that critical race theory was the foundational um, theoretical framework that I use, but it was limiting because critical race theory is a theorization of race, and in particular, I'm focused on this theorization of Blackness and how folks are confronting the specificity of anti-Blackness as a social construct, as an embodied lived experience of social suffering and resistance, which comes off of Michael Dumas and Ross's work in 2016. Really dope article if you haven't read it. So yeah, I understand that I needed to use critical race theory, but I was focused on the theorization of Blackness, how Black males saw themselves in these academic spaces, what does freedom mean to them in relation to their Blackness and their identity, and how they convey that through a hip hop album. In relation to marronage, it's essentially this idea of flight or the process of being free. So if we're having conversations or discussions around these anti-Black lived experiences that they've had on these college campuses, then how do they, how far do they see themselves of being free? Do they see themselves being free because they attain a degree? Or do they feel like they're limited with their freedom in relation to the experiences that they've had with campus police or, you know, a faculty member racially profiling them or asking them like a specific question around Blackness and then they're only Black student in the class. So this idea of marronage is like these four kind of areas: distance to freedom, movement, like the ability to move or like from one place to the next, property, so how they see themselves. So this idea of anti-Black is that not only are Blackness not seen as human, but it's other than human. So if people are kind of conceptualizing that day to day, like how do they see themselves? Property in relation to society, property in relation to, you know, the institution. Like for example, athletes, like seeing their bodies as property in relation to the institution to perform. And then purpose, like what would be the purpose that, in my mind, what is the purpose to galvanize folks to move from a place where maybe they don't feel like freedom exists and being in an environment that is safe, but also kind of critical. Like how can what purpose can be developed to help them move to a space towards freedom? And so that's essentially why I used this kind of conceptual framework of marronage of becoming free. So this is just a kind of a snapshot of the design itself. So if you look at the bottom, I'm essentially documenting this process of flight or the process of narratively discussing anti-Blackness. So from pre-study objectives, focus groups, which we'll talk about in a second, you see there's time, literally intentional time that is placed between each session. Um, and also to keep in mind that this research design was typically done all in a studio environment. So the space where we convene as a research study was an actual studio. So you see these listening sessions where essentially we're listening to beats, we're listening to instrumentals that producers, myself, as well as others have developed, and we're making informed decisions about which like sonic materials we want to use to prepare for the studio sessions. So 3 weeks in between, people have time to write, to reflect, to bounce ideas amongst each other in preparation for studio sessions. Um, and so, yeah, the goal is essentially to develop this end product of a hip hop album on anti-Blackness and freedom, which essentially creates this digital archive. Um, so I'm kind of going through this. I don't know, Tara, Penny, if there's questions or anything in the chat, but I'm more than welcome to answer those if it's something near and dear. But I'm just gonna keep going. Uh,
Please, we do have a few questions, but please feel free to keep going and we'll do our Q&A after.
okay, cool. From a methodology perspective, again, this idea of like sampling, making something out of nothing. I did want to use narrative inquiry, and obviously narrative inquiry is this kind of internal reflection type of methodological framework, but I made it a little bit more expansive. This idea of everything is us, like not to say black males are the same or monolithic, but I utilize it as a way to say that we are in community with each other and all of our narratives like are important. And so to utilize narrative inquiry, which again, narrative as itself, narrative as research reduces stories to objects, thereby refining a positivist view of knowledge. And me understanding that life is more complex and can never be fully understood, let alone represented. But at the same time, like there's a spiritual and political act of trust that is built when people are telling their stories, envisioning lives essentially without narrative. And so for me, what I'm essentially saying is um, this epistemology of listening is really this last piece that I mentioned, the spiritual and political act of trust. What I'm saying is I'm developing a space where all of these individuals can tell their stories in their own unique way, whether it's them being an MC, whether being a producer, a photographer, a videographer, graphic designer, but me understanding that meaning will be made, which is this idea of the epistemology of listening. So I'm making the argument that I don't know what's going to come out of this project. And that is the ethical piece of this work. I'm not saying we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z. What I'm saying is I'm going to carve space for people to make meaning of their own experiences, and then me to be a good steward of those narratives and know that meaning will be made, that a spiritual and political act of trust will be made, knowing that something great is going to come out of this project. And I just have to be willing to listen and understand how the project is moving, essentially going back to this idea of marriage. And so the last piece of it is, which I've already mentioned, the social space, um, which again, we could talk about narrative inquiry, sociality, temporality, place, all those things matter, the timing of it all, the place that we do it, how we socialize ourselves, etc. But this idea of hip hop as social space. So this is an article by Dr. Wilkins. He does work around hip hop architecture, and he says social space is the social activities that occur at a particular time and place that are specific to the establishment of a distinct social context. So the idea that I can bring in this design and these individuals, and it's dependent upon experience and memory, linked to time, past, present, and future, and defined and communicated by people through their patterns on use. So essentially, these individuals are the co-creators, or the yeah, the co-creators, the not even the research participants, but the co-creators of this design, this work. Um, and I think that's the beauty of me. Because I think at the time, Dr. Passway was pushing me to like, I think you should develop a hip hop methodology. And I'm like, I'm trying to get done. I don't think I have time, but I think I can pull from certain pieces that develop this kind of um, immersive and kind of explicit work to make it make sense. In relation to data analysis, I utilize this kind of broadening, burring, and story and restory, and essentially just taking like researcher memos, field notes, artifacts, interviews, focus groups. Those are like the broadening, the field text that goes into the burrowing piece, which is the interim text. So how do we move from conversations and discussions and artifacts to interim text? So the lyrics, the beats, the arts, the journaling, the recording, or just the process of editing, like the same way we would edit like our theses or our dissertations, and going back with our committee is the same thing that we're doing in the studio of like listening, providing feedback, going back into the studio, re-recording pieces that we need. Um, those are all kind of in that lens. And then the last piece is the story and restory. So the research text, like the album itself, and all the pieces that are connected to that album as well. So I'll give an example in relation to, um, I mentioned the focus groups. So the first time we ever kind of met as a group, we were in the studio space, but we didn't record the first two sessions. So I asked individuals as part of the research design to bring in artifacts that connected to the idea of what freedom means to them. So I was utilizing this not only to understand their perspectives from a research perspective, but I was also trying to build community and camaraderie with the individuals who majority of them had never met each other before. Again, these are students who are currently enrolled, have graduated, so they may be, 30 plus years, not 30 plus years, but like 30 years or older in relation to that, non-traditional students and individuals who stopped out. And so, for example, one of them identified as a photographer. And I'll say another thing. In the research itself, the dissertation, we utilize pseudonyms. So to, make sure that no one was kind of um, their image and likeness wasn't portrayed in the actual design. With the actual ebook itself, that's a totally different conversation. But I just want to make sure I mention that as well. But one of these individuals identified as a photographer, and they say, the only time I ever feel free is when I'm taking a picture, when I have my camera in my hand. But they said, I'm also reminded that my freedom is limited because with the Polaroid, there's always a white border around it. And to hear somebody articulate that and then in a space full of creatives, and then for someone to take this if I can go back, this field text, this artifact, and develop an interim text, i.e., lyrics or sonics, and then develop a song out of it is essentially the process of the album, which a part of the song it's called Polaroids. One of the songs on the album is called Polaroids. It says, I was looking at these Polaroids and books I got loans for. I didn't know about Black Wall Street till I was 24. So an individual is sharing their story, another individual is taking that story in and making it their own, and also bringing elements of their story as well. So they're saying, I'm looking up these Polaroids, I'm looking over my experiences being in an academic space in an institution in Oklahoma that I graduated from, and I accrued debt over time, and yet I live 30 to 45 minutes away from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then I didn't know about Black Wall Street till I graduated from this institution. So there's so many layers just with these lines alone to interrogate in relation to the institution. What should they be doing? What is not being taught? Like what are students actually looking for in relation to these institutions? And so I just wanted to give like an example of that work to bring it kind of to the forefront of the conversation. And then this is just me just sharing the research timeline again. Um, I'm going to stop here because I don't know if we have time for the listening session. So, Dr. Pasquay, Tara, y'all can kind of let me know. I know there's a Q&A component, and I just wanted to respect time. So,
Thank you so much for asking. I do think we have some time. That's fine. We would love for you to share all of your knowledge. So
okay. Okay,
please
cool.
definitely share it. If Dr. Pasquay is okay with it, I think it's okay.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely, absolutely. We do have from Dr. Elaine Richardson, not a question, but she wanted to show her respect for you to be bringing up your mother as a hip hop feminist, your his educators and women that helped you to hoist you, and his work up where it belongs. So
Yeah.
there's also other questions. I'll let Tara bring those up later. So thank you, and
Appreciate
yeah, appreciate it, Stevie.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transition to the ebook, but I want to center us before we get to the listening session. So I'm going to play a song, but it's actually a music video that was produced as part of the work for the dissertation and now the ebook. But these are just some questions that I have as if you all kind of consume the material. Just how do you listen? What are you listening? And I mentioned it's a visual, so what are you listening, looking for? What are you anticipating as you listen, watch? How do we know what to listen or look for? How's your body responding? And then how does this music, if at all, help you to remember certain things, whether your own experiences. So I mentioned I flipped this dissertation into an ebook, which will be coming out on University of Michigan Press at the end of this month. And what I'm going to share is the inside of the ebook in a second, but just wanted to share like the elements that you all will be getting as well as others if you kind of consume the material. So preface, introduction in relation to what the work is, an album. So think of like being on streaming platforms like Spotify, Tidal, Apple Music meets like a DVD player where you can go to like certain scenes in a film. Essentially, like you can click on tracks, which are essentially chapters of the book, and then you can click on the songs and it auto generates the lyrics. So it's like you're reading a book on Spotify or Tidal or Apple Music, if that makes sense. And it follows along as you're consuming it. There's also a 5-part documentary series, so it shows the process, the academic process of creating that album. Music videos, I call them auditory liner notes. So essentially, we have commentary where we just got on a like a Zoom, and we developed podcast episodes, 3 to 4 minutes, just talking about each record that we created for this album. And then there's a live performance of myself and the individuals on the project at an institution that we were invited to. So just wanted to share that, and then we can get to the video. So, Tara, Penny, can y'all give me a thumbs up? Make sure y'all can hear this.
Not yet.
You said not yet?
No. Not yet.
Well, we did test it earlier, so it should work.
Let me reshare it. How about now?
Hi, you've reached Yolanda's personal voicemail. I'm sorry I'm not available to take your call right now, but if you leave me a name and a brief message at the sound of the tone, I'll be sure to get back with you. Thank you and have a blessed day.
What's up, Ma? It's Dede. I'm here at this historically white institution with no solutions to the situations that's suffocating you back home. You all I got. Trust me, I'm telling you I'm better off back home. Because here I'm not considered an individual, but another number. Imagine finally making it to the place that you told me my whole life is gonna set me free. For years, since I was in grade school, you've been telling me that college is the place that people go to and later become rich. But what if I told you it wasn't any different from a prison? My advisor is my warden, and my professors are the guards. I try to grind it out, but problems here at home don't make it no better. But when I call back home, the volume in your voice is pain. As you try to sound excited and as if everything is okay, but I know the truth behind every word. I can feel the confusion in your tone, because I know just as well as you do, you don't know when you'll be able to pay the rent. My ears allow me to hear beyond your faith when you say everything is going to be okay, because my imagination allows me to see how dark the house is due to you not being able to pay the light bill. So no, Mama, I'm not okay. And I'm sorry, but I'm coming home. Where the fuck my headphones? Let me check out this space program shit.
You may die in one, and the other you're just hoping to survive. One will leave you broke, while the other will leave you broken and in debt. One is a violent space for black and brown bodies, while the other is a violent space for black and brown bodies. You will be told you belong in one and shown you don't belong in the other. As a black man, I'm just trying to decide if I should stay in college or go back to poverty. They both made me accustomed to the thoughts and feelings of struggling and hopelessness. But at least in poverty, I learned how to survive in the real world. Lord, I'm just trying to survive. I have questions for the answers. Lord, I'm just trying to survive. Lord, I'm just trying to survive.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it there for the sake of time. I want to make sure I get to questions. Essentially, what I was trying to share is we ended up formulating a name called the Space Program as far as the collective itself. Tribe Called Quest has a song called the Space Program. It says there ain't a space program for niggas. And so essentially we were saying we would be the space program, particularly in these academic spaces that allows other black and brown people to like have a sense of belonging, care, and feel safe at these institutions. And so essentially this individual, the student is saying, hey, I'm coming home, like I don't belong here. And essentially this space person is kind of connecting him into this world where he sees himself, he sees his lineage, etc. But yeah, just want to give context. I don't want to get to Q&A, but essentially these are the music, the lyrics, the music videos, the liner notes, etc. All of these are embedded in the ebook, and hopefully you all get a chance to kind of work through and see these particular elements. Um, and yeah, I'm gonna stop there and
Thank
we can
you.
have Q&A.
Thank you so much, Dr. View. This was such a rich discussion. And we just want to, I know you mentioned you're okay with doing question and answer, but just want to double check and make sure we may go to 1:10 p.m. if that's okay and okay with our guests. Just to answer questions, we would love and invite everyone to hang around with us so we can answer some questions. So if that's okay with you, Dr. View, we'll get
Yeah.
started. Thank you. Thank you. And so I'll look at our chat. We have a question. We have several questions, and I'll start with some of the lighter questions, and we'll go progress into some of the deeper questions there. So the first question from Candace is, and I'm particularly curious about this too. What are your favorite songs from Lauryn Hill and Pac's album?
To Zion for sure, favorite. I mean, that's like, I think that song in itself is the reason why my mom gave me that album. And fun fact, I actually have an album that I'm working on publishing that is in memory of my mother, and it's called Tidy. My mom was still holds a national high school assist record for assist in a season and a career, and never got a chance to play professionally. And one of the songs on that album I've sampled to Zion in memory of her. So that's what the song for sure on that one. Tupac's greatest hits. I mean, you can go a lot of ways, but I mean, you can't go wrong with Keep Your Head Up. So
Thank you, Dr. View.
yeah.
Next question from Gabriel. Thank you for your work. Your dissertation has an inspiration for my dissertation since I read it. Talking about anonymity. In the book, are you using their actual names?
No. So are you mentioning the ebook? Is that what he mentioned? I'm assuming,
I
probably.
would assume in the ebook,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So in the research, all anonymity, people had like names like Black Thought or Kanye in '04 or William Grant Still. Um, but that was part of the conversation with the collective. So with the ebook, it was a little different, and I had to kind of, which I always did, check in with the co-researchers to say like, hey, we have this opportunity with this ebook. Would you like to be shared like visibly? And they said yes. And so that's essentially how we made that decision. Even with how it's written, it says Curriculum of the Mind, Stevie Dr. E. Johnson and the space program. Like this is, of course they will say like this is my work, but like this is our work. And I wouldn't be able to be in this space if they weren't part of that. So, to answer your question, yes, these are actual real artist names. These are the actual individuals who are part of that design, but we've transitioned from the research to an actual collective, and so those expectations are a little bit different. But to answer your question, like these are the actual names of the artists. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. View. Next question from Gary. Where does the fifth element of hip hop, of knowledge of self, fit in? What I'm talking about are the 120 lessons of the nations of God and Earth, Zulu Nation, Infinity lessons, Afrocentric, and Black nationalism help to speak to anti-Blackness and freedom.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you dive into the album, you will hear it. Even just again, like how we organized our name, and the lineage of artistry that came before us. Like the space program is lineage of uh Dead Poets, Wu-Tang Clan, of Tribe Called Quest, and all of those. Um, De La Soul, all of these are elements of Afrocentricity and all these particular elements, griots who came before us. And so knowledge of self was the foundational component of the album. Obviously we have the other pieces, but I'm looking at the knowledge, the curriculum of the mind as a name, like that is essentially centering knowledge of self, like as the forefront of the work itself. So hopefully I answered your question, but like it's a true thread line of like who came before us and how we see ourselves moving forward.
I appreciate you elevating the title of your dissertation again and further emphasizing how the curriculum of the mind is actually a part of identifying with yourself. So thank
Uh,
you for bringing that up. We have an anonymous question. How do you think educators, both in K through 12 and higher ed, might incorporate hip hop pedagogies into their classroom?
yeah, so curriculum of mine has really helped me to do like projects beyond that. So when I graduated 2019, my colleague AD Carson, who is at University of Virginia, he's associate professor now. He came out with the first rap album dissertation, and at the time, he was the only tenure track hip hop professor. And so, um, although I got dissertation of the year, I didn't have a space. I didn't become a tenure track faculty till 2023. And in between that time, I had moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma to do some communal work, around a project called Fire in Little Africa, which is a commemorative project with the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. So 60 artists from the state of Oklahoma, who majority of them are direct descendants of folks who lost lives, businesses in 1921. And we came together, we developed an album, we developed a documentary, we developed podcast episodes, and we developed a curriculum where the songs that made the album were flipped into a curriculum that fit state and national standards for curriculum development. And also we trained artists who were interested in being in the classrooms to teach the curriculum as well. So to answer your question, high school, college, you know, these individuals have the knowledge and the knowledge production that is needed. And I would argue that the students want in these spaces. So it's an easy win for me to be like, hey, you all are interested in this work. And not only are you interested in the work, the artists that you all are going to be consuming will actually be in your classrooms. And so I think just providing space for individuals to um, kind of bring down these walls of like some people don't have the credentials that we have as academics, but they have the knowledge and skills that are necessary to move certain things. And I think just carving out space in those particular ways are just some things that I've done that I know have been beneficial.
Thank you, Dr. View. I think essentially what you're saying, hip hop is a microcosm, and other people have the information and skills to be able to help add to that. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. We do have a question, and I'm going to paraphrase it from Shay, who recently was working on a dissertation and also would like to have some information on how she can include a music or take the similar approach that you did and include that into her article and her work, although at times, sometimes it might be met with some resistance.
This is funny. I'll say I'll tell a story, then I'll just say this first. hey, I'm a framework at this point. Like you can utilize what you've learned today, what you hopefully the ebook that Tara and Penny have access to will be shared that you can share with your committee, with your advisor to say like, hey, like these are things that are happening. From a publication standpoint, University of Michigan Press is really the only press that I've seen as of right now who is really pushing the needle in relation to creative works as publishable things. So I think even just having a space to locate your work, and I also will say from a promotion and tenure standpoint, if I would be remiss if your committee would not want to be a part of something that is cutting edge that makes them look good as well. So I think just having those ducks in a row are necessary. I would say from my personal experience, I saw A.D. Carson finish 2 years before I finished my dissertation, and I didn't have a blueprint. And when he came out with his dissertation, I literally called him and had a conversation with him for like 2 hours. So like, how'd you get it passed? How was the feel for your committee? What do I need to look out for, do's and don'ts? And I did my research, and then I decided to um, convey that message to my original chair. So, fun fact, the chair that I started with isn't the one that I ended with. And it was because it's paraphrased. They said assumption without question, conjecture without fact, and you not knowing programmatic guidelines fall below a doctoral student posture. Basically, they're saying the idea that you have for your work is crazy. I don't want to be a part of it. I'm resigning as your chair, and good luck. And so, from a traumatic anti-Black, I mean, I'm not only developing a body of work, but I'm living it in real time. And that's why I say like Dr. Pasquay, just a side note, Dr. Pasquay was there for me when I didn't have a committee. Because when somebody resigns as your chair, they're not obligated to no one in the department is obligated to pick you up as a student. And so a lot of people were just like, hey, if you don't want to work with the student, then what's the problem with the student? So I say like having your your frameworks, your blueprints that you can share, and even just having an opportunity to where myself and others could maybe articulate these things to your committee, I think will help kind of buffer the resistance that I truly I truly received. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you for being vulnerable and open with us and sharing that. I didn't know that. So that's even insightful for me. So hey, thank you. We do have a comment. I did answer this question, but I'll go ahead and elevate this comment from Dr. Belinda Carr from Western Illinois University. Good afternoon, Dr. View. Your work has been very enlightening and truly reflective of the Black student experience, particularly at PWI. So just a kudos to you. And just for everyone who's attending, the session will be available on our YouTube channel, on the QualLab's YouTube channel. I'll drop that link into the chat in just a second, by Tuesday of next week at the latest. And so we will have that available and all of our other QualLab sessions you can watch.
I just want to say one more thing that I didn't get to was the kind of critiques of the album or like the limitations of the album. Some of the feedback that I received and I constructively was it was focused primarily on Black males and particularly cis heterosexual Black males in the study. So again, for example, being in the studio, like if certain things are happening, I can't stop it. I have to like let it happen as it goes. So I think just carving space out for other experiences, queer, trans experiences, as well as like black women experiences. I think the tricky part is the power dynamics of me being like an executive producer and like a PI of the study, while also the patriarchy like taking place. But I just wanted to bring those things into the forefront. Like it's not all perfect. There was definitely things that could have been done differently. But I just want to make sure I share those limitations as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. View. We have a few more questions, and for a few questions by some of our same guests, I'm going to ask a two-part question if that's okay. And so, The first part of the first question is, thank you for sharing this methodology. It's so innovative. Earlier, you referred to the DJ software that you were utilizing in undergrad as inherently racist. Can you speak to more why you classified that as such? And actually, I'll pause there because that's a pretty deep question. And that question is from Nita. And then I'll ask the second question, part of that question.
Yeah, I mean, just these technologies, I'm essentially saying these technologies were not made with like black and brown intellect at the forefront. So what other creatives who don't look like me may do aren't the same things that I would do. So the I would also say the lack of equipment at the time too allowed me to really, I say, read the manual. And what I mean by that is like I just started pressing buttons and figuring out what works, how does it work, and then how can I make it do the things that I wanted to do for the way that I know I can translate sound, music, transitions, experiences, memory in ways that I know that the software wasn't designed to do. So that's essentially what I'm kind of referring to as this inherently racist software.
And building on that second part of the question from Nita, and we only have about a minute left, and so we'll try to get through the rest of the questions. Can you speak more to your process on recruiting people to participate in the space program?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of I kind of leaned in my influence as well. I mean, I I was known as a DJ and as a scholar prior to the study. So I think that I kind of had like a level up of like, hey, I'm doing this study. And I think people were curious as to like this intersection of like, okay, what are you doing? And I want to participate based on the criteria. So I mean, I definitely did like some outreach for sure. But it was people the profile of who I was kind of already heightened at the time. And it kind of made it a little bit easier for me. So, which again, that's a whole nother conversation around public facing scholarship and et cetera, and how much of yourself you want to share with, the world. But yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. So.
Wonderful. And so next we have one comment from Heather and then one question from Belinda. And the comment from Heather is, thank you so much for your work. As a current doctoral student, I'm currently continually wowed by the varied, creative, and reflective ways that others have approached their dissertation. And they are thinking ahead and deeply appreciative of all scholars who are doing this work to inspire those who come after you. So thank you, Dr. View. And the final question is, what are your thoughts on being your authentic self with educators who are in community with you or who are those in the academic community? And I think this speaks to more so of balancing the dualities of our identities and also just showing up as ourselves. And so how do we do that?
Um, it's not a balance, it's a harmonization. I think certain moments, certain seasons require certain pieces of identity or ways. Like I'm currently in a space where this book is coming out, and I mentioned like I'm a very as public face as I am, like I'm very introverted, I'm very low key. But I'm in a space where this work is not just about me, it's about, the individuals on the project who are able to be in these spaces all the time with me, but also the reason why we did the project in the first place. And I think thinking about future babies and children and students who will see this type of work, and the field is changing. The student profile is changing. The attention span of students is very like quick, and not to take away from traditional ways of doing and teaching and writing, but sometimes there's just another level of creativity that has to be thought about to, and I don't want to use the term reel in, but like to invite students to explore and question, and then kind of develop these wraparound elements to get them to understand the full focus of something. So I think that is a tough balance, but I think I have some great mentors that I have picked for myself. Dr. Pasquale, Dr. Bettina Love, who, if you are familiar, Punished for Dreaming, I did an album for the book, Punished for Dreaming. Um, Dr. Christopher Emden. I mean, I have some really great folks who have looked out for me, and I just think just having those people in place is important. But I think at the same time, it's like giving yourself grace, because just not gonna get it right. You're not gonna get it perfect. And life will hit you in unexpected ways. And I've dealt with that personally. And so I think just understanding the ebbs and flows, just like a DJ set. Like there's ebbs and flows of when people come into a space that it needs to feel intimate, it needs to feel safe and secure. And then you start to build this experience. And I think that same approach has to be taken as a scholar of like getting into the semester and the build up of like, okay, get into my groove, and but also carving out space to rest and to process and heal and to find time to connect with people. I think is important too. So
Thank you, Dr. View. That concludes our question and answer section of our webinar. And before wrapping up, we just want to officially thank everybody for attending. Thank you so much, Dr. View, for your time. Thank you, Dr. Pasquale, for providing us with the space to have this presentation and conversations like this. And again, thank you to all of our guests. We encourage everybody to stay connected with us. Please visit us on our website, u.osu.edu/QualLab. Stay connected with us on Twitter, and we look forward to seeing you soon next semester. So thank you.
thanks for having me.
Ah, so appreciative. Thank you so much. And I did mention to someone